So you already know that nothing is permanent except change. And just like our lives, the organizations we work for are under constant change. They have to be, otherwise, they run a huge risk of not being able to evolve and be ready for the uncertainties of the future. So, do you know there are proper and official change management and transformation programs that most organizations run? These change initiatives are intended to do a lot of important things like boost quality, improve culture, enhance productivity, reverse major problems. But unfortunately, a majority of such initiatives fail. Honestly, they don't have to. Presenting a summary of the HBR's must-reads on change management, a compilation of highly popular and selected articles that would help you to understand, lead, or participate in a change management initiative. As usual, I should also be adding my own bit just to clarify and simplify some concepts. So let's begin. Cotter insists that most people do not appreciate the fact that transformation is not an event. It is actually a process. It moves from one step to other with flowing boundaries that build on each other. It can take a long time, sometimes even years. These steps are clearly defined but not always followed, rather skipped. We all know shortcuts don't always work. So please pay attention to this hugely popular framework encompassing these stages. Number 1. Establish a sense of urgency. Actions needed. Do your homework to align with your change idea, such as the market dynamics or internal environment, and try to convince 75% of the managers that they cannot afford to maintain status quo. Pitfalls. Underestimating the fact that it is extremely difficult to bring people out of their comfort zones. Also, overestimating the risks involved. Number 2. Form a powerful guiding coalition. Actions needed. Bring a group of motivated people and encourage them to work as a team outside the regular hierarchy. Pitfalls. No prior experience in leading such efforts. Number 3. Create a vision. Actions needed. Create a vision and develop strategies to realize that vision. Pitfalls. As usual, complicated or vague vision. Number 4. Communicate that vision. Actions needed. Explore creative ideas to communicate the vision in a simple yet comprehensive manner. Pitfalls. No clarity or under communicating the vision and behaving in a way that doesn't support the vision. Number 5. Empower others to act on the vision. Actions needed. Removing systems that don't support the vision and encouraging people to take risks and talk about creative and non-traditional ideas or actions. Pitfalls. Failing to manage powerful people who resist change. Number 6. Plan and create short-term wins. Actions needed. Define performance improvements and recognize and reward employees who contribute. Pitfalls. Failing to account for success early enough. Number 7. Consolidate improvements and do more change. Actions needed. Use the credibility you have achieved to change systems that are not aligned with the change effort. Develop those employees who can implement the change. Introduce more energy into the efforts by bringing in exciting ideas and people. Pitfalls. Declaring victory too soon. You need to wait and keep fine-tuning before doing this. Number 8. Institutionalize new approaches. Actions needed. Develop plans that match the new approach. Pitfalls. Not creating social norms or behaviors that are consistent with changes or promoting those who do not believe in the change effort. When things are looking bad, on the brink of a disaster, most turnaround leaders go after the strategy of the organization, reorganize the structures, and try rooting out inefficiencies. And then they wait and wait and wait. Finally, they realize that the expected improvements haven't materialized. So, how do you make change stick? Number one, you need to do the groundwork, set the stage, and convince people that company can survive only through radical change. 2. A concrete change plan has to be presented, which has its activities and results expected clearly listed. 3. While and after executing this plan, employees' moods and feelings need to be managed. Change is painful, isn't it? 4. As the turnaround starts bringing results, reinforce the behavioral or the cultural change so it doesn't go back to square one. Remember, an effective persuasion campaign needs to be run months before the actual turnaround plan is set. People need to be shaped and made ready emotionally, intellectually, and behavior-wise to accept the change. It's not easy, but without this, no change effort can succeed. This persuasion campaign as phases of persuasion before the implementation. There is also the concept of dysfunctional routines. Basically, people are creatures of habits. So leaders need to work with their teams to make them realize that things have changed, and they too need to adapt and break the trap of negative and unproductive behaviors. So this is an important lesson for all leaders. Persuasion is the ultimate tool without which even the best of turnaround plans can fail. In 2003, IBM conducted a 72 hours long social experiment to discuss the company's values via the corporate intranet called the Values Jam. Thousands of employees joined it and commented. Clearly, it has struck a chord, but a disturbing one. It was mostly about employees cribbing and posting negative and sarcastic comments. However, after letting off the steam, in 24 hours, the mood started to shift, and people started proudly commenting about the organization's values despite some shortcomings. After this jam, the CEO, Samuel J. Palmisano, and his selected team came up with a set of new values and went on to prove that those were not merely window dressing but should affect and reflect in everything IBM stands for and does. So, what were those earth-shaking values? Dedication to every client's success, innovation that matters for our company and the world, trust and personal responsibility in all relationships. Not so earth-shaking, isn't it? That's the point. So let's move on to the interview by HBR with the CEO Palmisano in an attempt to summarize the strategic importance of such values in all times, particularly good times. When CEO Palmisano was asked what made him think corporate values are more than just feel-good statements and how do they help IBM's strategy, he responded that in an organic system, a company needs to adapt, and despite the changes in strategies or business model, these values remain true to the essence. However, over the years, such beliefs too become distorted and misinterpreted, so they need to be thought over too. A command and control mechanism doesn't really work, especially if you have to instill passion in your employees. The clients don't accept traditional bureaucratic systems and need flexibility and innovation, even if the employees do. He further highlights the importance of a value-based management system, especially in an extremely large and complex organization like IBM, as there is no right way to optimize IBM through organization structure or management mandate. People need to feel and act empowered to take decisions that support IBM's strategy and culture. Still, even if it's not possible to inspect or control everyone, you still can't let go of the reins. The CEO insists that it is people and not products that become an organization's brand, so their behavior across the globe should be consistent with the values the company represents. Finally, he concludes that if he has or can get people excited and dedicated about the new values that emerged after the jam session, he could sleep at night confident about the future. A lot of us, especially in managerial positions, feel from inside that some policies and procedures in the organization are unfair or racist or chauvinistic, but we carry on quietly as we don't want to create a ruckus. We remain conflicted from inside due to our inability to take concrete actions and to be able to change deep set behaviors and cultures of the organization, especially when they come from the top. So, how can you rock this corporate boat without falling out in the water? You can't push the agenda as it might lead to resentment, but if you remain silent, the same resentment can build inside you. So, let's try to talk about being a tempered radical, an informal leader who challenges the prevailing culture but does it quietly. Without forcing anyone, you can inspire people to do the right thing. You can remain firm but flexible. You can work alone but unite others. You don't have to fight powerful people, you just make powerful friends. So, what does it lead to? Change, even if it's gradual. Research shows organization changes either through drastic actions or an evolutionary approach that comes through the tempered change strategies. Let's now look at the spectrum of such an approach. On the left end, you will see disruptive self-expression, which means simple, subtle acts of individual style. Then there is verbal jujutsu, a kind of verbal martial art which is still not direct but turns the other people's statements into a chance to impose changed behavior. I think we all practice it unknowingly. Yes, it can hurt a bit, but the end goal is noble, isn't it? Personally, I would suggest not being aggressive unless it's a matter of justice and a cause you feel strongly about. Then we have variable term opportunism, to recognize and act on short and long-term chances to motivate others. Finally, we have strategic alliance building that brings about extensive change by bringing powerful people together. A word of caution: no tool is entirely a separate entity and has fluid boundaries, so it all depends on the context, the situation, and the change you want to bring about. As management researchers, the authors of this article have always been fascinated by what triggers high performance and brings a struggling, sick organization back to life. They conducted a database of more than 125 businesses and non-profit organizations and interviewed a lot of key players who tracked the performance of turnarounds, including the famous case of William Bratton, the police commissioner of New York City, who revolutionized an increasingly complex, crime-laden city to the safest large city in the nation in less than 2 years. This research led to textbook examples of leadership which can be called the tipping point leadership. Let's explore it further through the 4 steps to the tipping point that tell you how to deal with major hurdles. Number 1. Break through the cognitive hurdle. If, as a manager, you really want to bring about changes, don't force it through numbers or pressurize people to do better. Instead, let them understand or really experience the problems the organization is facing. Number 2. Sidestep the resource hurdle. When things aren't good, you don't have to compromise on your ambitions or fight for more resources. Instead, use what you have, but you use them well, especially on the areas that need the change the most. Number 3. Jump the motivational hurdle. People need to really want to bring about a change. Don't need to do expensive, time-consuming reformation exercises for the whole organization. Instead, motivate key influencers, people with multiple connections. Identify them and let them do your work. Usually, people listen to them. Also, it is important to make challenges not too tough but attainable. Number 4. Knock over the political hurdles. Now this is a tough one. The only way you can deal with this is to have powerful, respected, senior insider on your team. Don't forget to identify equally powerful resistors too. You need to learn how to deal with them, and that's really important. If you are a leader or going to be one in the future, remember It's not an easy game at the top. Not only is it lonely, it is a dangerous place to be, full of people and manifold events to take you out of the game. Sometimes such attempts are needed for leaders who want to execute wrong strategies, but more often than not, it's done as it challenges people to come out of their comfort zones, change their behaviors and habits, often in return of nothing but a promise for a better future. This kind of a dangerous change is referred to as an adaptive change, which is different from technical change. Do you think it is easy to make people realize that it is them who are the problem as well as the solution? So, how do you manage the situation to minimize the threats to eliminate you? Yes, there are people who want to do that. Let's dive into it. Number 1. Managing your environment. Operate in and above the fray. It means being able to see what is going on and who is defending old habits. Quote the uncommitted. You need to show that your intentions are serious by practicing what you preach. Cook the conflict. It means just regulate the fire, not high enough to create an explosion, but to keep the motivation going. It's all about balance. So slow the pace, add some humor, and inspire others towards a better tomorrow. Place the work where it belongs. Resist getting into everything. Mobilize the right people to do it for you. Number 2. Managing yourself. It is connected to the points just mentioned. Resist your desire to control everything. Don't inflate your ego as people will become more and more dependent on you. Anchor yourself in a safe place and look after your own peace of mind. Talk to a friend or a confidant, not from your own organization. And lastly, try not to take these attacks personally. Easier said than done, isn't it? We all know of highly capable and committed people who don't want to change, despite having a deep commitment to the company. Organizational psychologists call this an aspect of competing commitment. It may seem like resistance to change, but it is in fact a personal immunity to change. It is a subconscious, hidden goal that conflicts with their stated commitments. Example, a skilled project manager just prolonging his project as he doesn't want to get another assignment too soon. So how do you break through these competing commitments? Number 1. Diagnose the competing commitment. This would mean spending a lot of time, at least a couple of hours with the employee and having a candid conversation. Raise topics like what really should change, what commitments are related to their grievances, and if they feel worried or anxious about the alternative choices they cannot handle. 2. Identify the big assumption. Now these are what we have grown up believing or have been a big part of our early professional lives. Many people have these deep-rooted assumptions as they feel the change contradicts with their behaviors. Talk to them about it, why they feel what they do, and then try to find a balance without being too imposing. So have you heard of these assumptions? I fear I will lose myself if I connect with those with different backgrounds. I assume my boss will not support me if I come into the limelight. If I am a leader, I am expected to solve all problems, otherwise people will see me as an incompetent leader. I assume that if I become more productive and show more passion, I will be challenged with more complex and time-consuming work. So better stay out of it. Well, to be honest, some of them are legitimate, and we all have felt like this at some point in our lives. And they do come in the way of making necessary changes. Identify your own conflicting commitments and then you go after the employees. You will be surprised. Most of the organizations know that they have to change or they will perish. Internet companies such as Amazon, eBay also need to manage fast-paced, entrepreneurial mindset in the competitors. Despite being so well established, themselves. Change is not so easy to pull off, whether it is installing a new technology, downsizing, restructuring, or even trying to change the culture or behavior of people. Research implies the brutal fact that 70% of change initiatives fail. You know that already. We need to now understand the two basic theories of change. Number 1. Theory E for economic value. This is the hard approach which talks only about the numbers. Number 2. Theory O for organizational capability. The softer approach that calls for developing the culture and commitment of the employees through motivation and teamwork. Now both are different, and striking a balance too is tough. Actually, employees are wary of the leaders who move around being tough and having nurturing behaviors. So what do? 1. Goals. Set clear goals that embrace the paradox between economic values and organizational capabilities. Example, our objective is to increase shareholders' value, and for that we also need a culture of shared values and creative ideas. 2. Leadership. Direction should come from the top to engage people from down, decentralize decision making, and give people more power. 3. Focus. Yes, focus on both numbers and people. It means being able to win both hearts and minds. Not easy, so the key word is balance. 4. Process. Plan for spontaneity. It is okay to make mistakes and fail, so establish risk-free zones so people can experiment. 5. Reward system. Motivate people to reinforce change rather than just drive the change based on the improvements made and the objectives realized. Now this is a very intriguing chapter, and we'll talk about a framework you can flaunt in your organization. You see, there is very little agreement on the factors that influence transformation initiatives. Ask 5 executives and chances are you will get 5 different answers. Though there is no right answer, the hard side of change management lets you focus on the hard aspects. Actually, you can calculate and predict and tell if your change management efforts are likely to be successful. So how do you do that? Think DICE. Duration. Time between milestones review. The shorter, the better. Typically, long projects reviewed regularly stand a better chance of success than a short project reviewed infrequently. Integrity. Project team skills, their capabilities, problem solving skills. So look for smart and savvy people who can take responsibility. Commitment. Senior executives' commitment. This is extremely important as employees will not take a change initiative seriously if they do not see their leadership practicing what they preach. Leaders also need to communicate their own level of dedication. Effort. The extra efforts employees need to put in apart from their regular work. Typically, the lesser the better. It is natural that if employees need to put in a lot of additional efforts, they are likely to resist the change. So how do you calculate the DICE score? Remember, D plus 2I plus 2C1 plus C2 plus E. Sorry for the complications, but I'll try to make it simple. So here is the fascinating part. D, or duration between project reviews. If this duration is less than 2 months, give it 1 point. If it is between 2 and 4 months, give it 2 points. If between 4 and 8 months, give it 3 points. But if the reviews are 8 months apart, give it 4 points. I for integrity. Here, higher score of 4 is for low capabilities team and lower score is for high capabilities team. C1 is for senior management's commitment. Again, lower score is better than higher. More commitment will actually have a lower score. C2 for local level commitment. Follow the same rule as above. Local means the team member. E for efforts. What percentage of extra efforts is required? Give 1 point for less than 10%. Give 2 points for 10 to 20%, give 3 points for 20 to 40% extra, and if it is more than 40% extra efforts, give it 4 points. So you will realize a lower score is better. So this formula will generate a score ranging from 7 to 14. Score between 7 to 14 means the project is highly likely to be successful. Scores higher than 14 but lower than 17 is the worry zone. Scores over 17 means it is a risky project. This framework can predict the outcomes of the success, but in my personal opinion, since it has a lot of subjectivity, it may not work in every situation. Also, I feel it is complicated to communicate, and I would depend more on a combination of expert opinion, experience, and gut instinct than this framework. However, it is surely an interesting concept to discuss during those meetings, isn't it? All the best! Sometimes even the steps that sound like a textbook case in organizational transformation fail. Despite company-wide ambitious programs, new organizational structures, better performance management systems, capability development programs, or even a group of motivated change agents, one doesn't get to see real results. What goes wrong? Rather, what can you do to avoid things from going wrong? 1. Mobilize commitment to change through joint diagnosis of problems. Here, the key word is joint. Leadership needs to involve people on the ground to tell the truth about the real problem that needs fixing. 2. Develop a shared vision of how to organize for competitiveness. Do not go after titles or compensation, but roles and responsibilities. Break through those rigid hierarchical structures. 3. Foster consensus for new vision, competence to enact it, and cohesion to advance it. Well, in simple words, the general management needs to prove strong leadership skills. 4. Spread revitalization to all departments without pushing from the top. People should be willing to learn new skills and collaborate with different departments. 5. Monitor this process, adjusting in response to problems. The process needs to be watched over and the commitment to change should be strengthened. So friends, that is the summary of the 10 chapters on change management as described in the HBR book. If you asked me, based on my understanding, I would propose a simple concept of 5 C's. But before that, do remember, one size doesn't fit all and everything depends upon the context. Still, here we go. C for case, creating a compelling case for the change and convincing others. C for champions, appointing a team of dedicated people with clearly stated responsibilities, activities, and expectations regarding the program. C for capabilities. These champions and other employees of the organization need the requisite skills and talents to design, execute, as well as sustain the change initiative. Create a list of those skills and plan to close the gaps. C for care. Leadership and employees should care enough and deeply about the change needed, so motivation is the key. And finally, most important of all, C for communication. Without clear, comprehensive, and transparent communication across the organization, no change initiative can ever work. So C for case, plus C for champions, plus C for care, plus C for capabilities, plus C for communication is equal to C for change. Easy to remember, isn't it? I hope you enjoyed watching the video, and I also hope it was a learning experience for you. It sure was for me. Thank you for watching.